Drew Houston, welcome, by the way. I'm thrilled that you're able to come in person to One Market. Tyler just said the word radical. It really was. It was October 2020 when you said, we're going to be remote first, when a lot of other companies were just figuring it out. So what led you to that decision? What are you seeing now? Yeah, well, we saw that work had changed forever. I think going into lockdown, we were all surprised by some of the things that were working well. And the flexibility we knew once people have it, they wouldn't want to give it back. So we just started thinking about what would the future look like and how do we get the best of the remote world and all the benefits, not having to commute, things like that, the flexibility, ability to live anywhere, while also preserving the good parts of the in-person experience, because I don't think there's any substitute for that. And then also, like, how do you avoid getting the worst of both worlds? Like, how do you avoid a world where you're like commuting to the office, to a half-empty office, to be back on Zoom, things like that. So we made a really big bet because we saw that there was an opportunity to really redesign the nature of work and rethink it to get the best of both. And what I love about what you did is this is what your whole business is built on, is making work more productive and being able to do it from everywhere. So in a sense, you guys were really living that mission. What have you seen since then, though? Throughout the pandemic, we've talked about this a lot on air, productivity, actually increased when people were able to work remotely for some of the reasons you just outlined. But what have you seen in the last year that the economy has opened up? Are you seeing that same kind of productivity? Yeah, I mean, we've seen that the model's working. We're really happy with the choices we've made. We basically created this virtual first working model where we rip out all the individual desks, turn our offices into convening and collaborative space, and then we're really intentional about how we bring people together for offsites and have really good in-person experiences. And something like 90% of our candidates, it's been really great for recruiting, so 90% of candidates say that our model has been a big draw for them. We've seen productivity, efficiency, work-life balance. When we survey employees, some of our highest scores are in those areas. And so it's not perfect. I think there's a lot of things we're still tuning and fixing, but it's been great. Yeah, and so it's interesting because some companies are trying to get workers back into the office. They went hybrid because they had to, or allowed some workers to work remotely. But you guys are actually seeing, you let people go remote, provided opportunity for in-person experiences, but you've been seeing a boomerang employee. Explain to our audience what that means and how that's sort of changed the way you look at hybrid work and remote. Sure. So a boomerang employee is someone who leaves a company and comes back. And we experienced the great resignation, or kind of the great musical chairs, like all these people changing jobs during the pandemic. But what we didn't expect is how many people will come back. And so we had 60 people who left Dropbox at some point last year and came back, which is way higher than any point on record. And we asked why, and a lot of it was because they appreciate that we had thought through a lot of these issues. Or I think every company is still struggling with, like, how do we make this new world work? And companies want to like push the go back to 2019 button, find it's not working. So I think there's a new set of concerns that all managers or all companies have to think about. So you saw some employees who are at Dropbox leave and come back. What about in terms of recruiting from other companies, big tech companies who did not go remote first, like an Apple that says you got to be in the office 3 days a week? Did you guys become an appealing proposition for those kinds of workers, and how much have you hired? Yeah, I mean, we've been able to punch way above our weight class. I think the companies that offer flexibility are going to be able to out-recruit, out-retain, outperform ones that don't. So we've been able to get awesome talent from people who have wanted, I think during the pandemic, so many people wanted to kind of spread out, move to different places, but are now outside the commuting radius of where they used to physically work. And so we've been able to unlock pools of talent in ways that we never could have previously. And how has that positioned you guys for this specific moment when we talk about the softening economic backdrop and how we're seeing either hiring freezes or layoffs? You guys had to get the cost side of this sorted out very quickly as well. You guys got rid of a lot of your physical office space. So how has that positioned you now in terms of your finances? I mean, it's been helpful. I think it's a very efficient model where people can live and work from anywhere. I think it allows you to recruit and unlock pools of talent in new places that aren't as expensive, but where there's still really good people. So
there's a lot of financial benefit, but our primary focus has really been how do we get the best people and be the most effective.
Where are you finding the best people? Are you hiring foreign workers? Talk about how that plays out now that you're a remote-first company.
Yeah, honestly, all over the place, and it's been striking to me how many areas we maybe started before the pandemic with 0 people, but now have really blossomed. So Boston, I was there a couple months ago, did a happy hour, 30 people there, 0 of whom were at Dropbox before the pandemic. LA is now one of our largest hubs, even though we don't have any physical space there. So it's been amazing to be able to bring all these people into the company and have it be decoupled from our physical space.
What about foreign workers? There are the visa limitations that we've talked about for years and years in the tech industry. Does it make it easier to hire those people? But you also talk about this really important in-person element. So if you do hire abroad, how do you sort of include them when you do in-person events or meetings? Yeah, so
it's a balancing act. So we have kind of a hub, or what we call studio model, where we have a physical location. So in Europe, our headquarters is in Dublin, but we just opened up in Poland as well. So we're able to pull folks. So we open up in regions. We don't hire from all over the world, but in the United States, for example, we've got a few dozen locations where we might have had a handful before.
Right.
So we have this hub and spoke model.
Now, most people know Dropbox as a data storage company, but over the last few years, you guys have pushed into more productivity tools, which is kind of great because you were able to be a testing ground during the pandemic. What have you found about the way people work, either at your own company or customers?
I think there's a lot of room for improvement, right? In a world where we're working out of screens instead of working out of offices, when you look at like what's on the screen or when you look underneath your Zoom window, it's just like total mayhem, right? And Dropbox has always been great about syncing your files, but in addition to having all your 100 icons on your desktop, you also have 100 tabs in your browser. So there are like new
hundreds and hundreds of tabs.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so in a lot of ways, it kind of brings us back to the problem we started with, which is like our stuff is everywhere. It's totally disorganized. Help me pull it all together into one place. And so we're solving new problems for our customers, and whether that's we found that there's no way to go over someone's desk and look over their shoulder, so we created a new project or a new product called Dropbox Capture, which actually just went live today, where you can do little screen recordings or videos and send those out instead of having to call everybody together for a meeting. And then when we zoom out, there's this huge opportunity for Dropbox to organize your working life and organize all your stuff, not just your files, and bring design, bring machine learning to help people kind of cut through the clutter and be organized.
Do you think that in the future, and we hear a lot about this, Zoom was great during the pandemic, but now when you can be in person, some people are in Zoom and some are not. We've heard from other people that maybe the metaverse is a solution here. How do you think of it in terms of remote work and productivity, and like you said, looking over someone's shoulder at their screen? Could you do that in the metaverse through your avatar?
Well, I think it's super exciting, right? I think we were all blown away by the degree to which we could get things done over Zoom, and some of the things that we held sacred, like this 5-day in-office work week, maybe we didn't really need that. And I think the same thing will be true in the future with the metaverse. Like, maybe there's a better way for us all to be together virtually than just being a bunch of squares on a screen. So I think the metaverse is really exciting from a productivity standpoint, like being able to have, being able to meet with other people and have more of a sense of presence than you would over a video call.
Right. How far away do you think that is?
I think it'll start phasing in. I think we're certainly running experiments where maybe a few meetings we would have done on Zoom in small groups we can do together with our headsets
with your
on.
Headsets.
Right. I think it'll take some getting used to, but
cool.
I think it's going to be a really exciting direction.
We have a few minutes left, and I want to spend some time talking about culture, which has been such an important issue over the pandemic. People feeling isolated, and getting back in person sometimes helps, or the opposite effect is coming back in person can actually hurt with some of the personal stuff. And if you're a working parent or you're taking care of a parent, how have you been able to manage that with a remote workforce? How do you check in with your employees to make sure that they're doing okay?
Well, first thing is to care and measure it. So it's always been a priority for us. we have to pay a lot more attention to how to employees' experience, right? And there's on a couple dimensions. One is we're virtual first, not virtual only. Mm-hmm. I love technology. I love the metaverse, but I just still don't. There's no substitute for being able to be in person like this. And so making sure you don't drift too far to that extreme where people don't have human contact or relationships. I think it's really tough. It's been really tough for people onboarding into a company, things like that. So I think you have to redesign the rhythms of your company so that you can get a lot done remotely. You can get, whether that's over a video call or over or over these different collaborative tools. But being really thoughtful about how do you bring together in person and make it worth their while, right? Because I think where a lot of companies are getting tripped up is they're either trying to force people to do things that don't make sense, or they're not thinking about the user experience of like, hey, if you're asking people to commute an hour each way to be for like some half-hour stand-up, or to be back on Zoom, that's a bad use of their time. So I think companies have to be a lot more intentional about these kinds of decisions.